The following podcast topics are not for minor age listeners. Please take the time to skip to another podcast if your children are present. If you are an adult faint at heart or a victim, please be advised that discussions in this episode contain topics about SA and other conversations that may be triggering. Thank you.
Welcome back to The Trade. This is Gina Beck.
This is Drew Williams.
Thank you for listening, liking, commenting, and subscribing. We appreciate y'all, especially all of you listeners on Apple and Spotify and iHeart. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and like always, thank you again for the continued support, the continued engagement, and the word of mouth spreading the podcast around and things like that. Thank you guys.
How are you, Drew?
I'm all right, G. How are you?
I'm doing okay. We all have pets, and my pet is kind of going through something, so, prayers for Blaze, but hopefully she comes, she comes through. She's having a hard time eating and stuff, so it's really I've never experienced this, so it's really weird.
It's really hard when I know people like to say they're just pets, but people like us, they're family, and it hurts. I send a lot of healing vibes and prayers for Blaze and all the pets at your household.
Appreciate you.
Well, I think I'm going to start this episode off with just 3 basic things that I found. I've been making these notes for the last, month and a half and trying to work them into an episode. And it's getting to a point where they're kind of getting old, so I need to say the stats before there's updated stats. So this comes from the traffickinginstitute.org and the International Labor Organization, the ILO. And this is them breaking down global estimates of human trafficking. The ILO estimates that there were 24.9 million victims of human trafficking around the world. The report uses the term forced labor to describe the forms of exploitation commonly referred to as human trafficking in the United States and other nations. The 2.49 million figure includes both sex trafficking and/or commercial sexual exploitation, forced labor exploitation, both in the private and state-imposed sector. The study found that trafficking happens in every region of the world. While it occurs everywhere, types of trafficking can vary based on local customs and individual circumstances. 20.1 million labor trafficking victims. Of the 24.9 million estimated victims of trafficking, the ILO found in 2016 that there were about 21.1 million victims of labor trafficking globally. This includes any person who has been forced to work or perform a service under the threats of penalty or harm. And in many places, this can look like forced labor to work in a factory, on a farm, or as a domestic worker. 9.2 million victims were men, 10.9 million were women, and 3.3 million were children. And this is the last stat. The ILL also estimated there were 4.8 million sex trafficking victims experiencing commercial sexual exploitation around the world in 2016. This category includes any adult who involuntarily participate in the sex industry and children experiencing commercial sexual exploitation. 3.8 million victims were adults and 1 million were children. Globally, 99% of the victims were women and girls. And this is just those stats that just really put it into right in your face just how much of a global problem it is. It's not just, here, it's not just Asia, it's not just Europe, it's not just Africa, it's not Southeast Asia, it's everywhere. And there's people fighting it and there's people that are doing it. And it's just facts.
Numbers are growing too, rapidly. It's not, those numbers don't just stay the same. Every day it's growing. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's absolutely nuts.
A woman named Danielle Confer, she spoke with a trafficking survivor in Tucson and also a detective, and they wanted to talk about some things that are signs that someone is being trafficked, what to look out for, because she's been through it. So what she said is at 14 years old, she ran away from home and she met some older men and ended up living in their home and was doing things between here and another part of town. And it was like a service to these men, she said, is what she would do. Somebody saw her on the streets and knew that she'd been missing, so they called the police, and her dad came to the house where she was and picked her up with law enforcement. She, like many other sex trafficking victims, were trafficked more than once. She said that she ran away again and ended up on the streets in different states, and for lack of a better word, was trafficking herself. She was still a minor, but just finding any type of form of survival just to get by, it was all she knew at that point, she said. And for her, it took the birth of her son to pull her out of the cycle. So pretty much she's saying is like, it's about who she revolved herself around and being on the streets and running away and being so young, surrounded by all these older men who are in influence and who would, coerce or give her, she said, survival, maybe give her things so that she could survive. And you know what they probably wanted. So she's just saying, like, just to look out. You can't trust everybody, and I think that's just in one hand common sense, but in other hand people have to learn that on their own.
Yeah, and unfortunately, someone like her had to learn out the hardest way.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's really sad.
hmm the article will be below if you guys want to see the full story. Sometimes it could just be a lot for people, so if you guys want to read that on your own, you're more than welcome. All the links are always below.
Yeah, and that's a good segue. There'll also be links to. I want to shout out a bunch of the hunting groups that are currently active. First and foremost, I want to shout out one of our former guests. People doing they were doing it when we were doing. They continue doing it. Arizona Predator Prevention. They do an awesome job. I don't think people talk about them enough anymore because they're always catching people all around the U.S. They do a great job, so definitely check them out if you haven't yet. But there's a kind of a new wave of hunters on Instagram, and if you follow us on Instagram, you've probably seen in our stories some of these people that I'm going to mention. But you really should take the time to go check these pages out. The thing I really like about this new wave of hunters is they don't really want their faces out there, and it's just a complete focus on the the weirdos and their weirdo crimes. And I think the one that really first opened my eyes to everything that was going on Instagram with these groups is Sock Bunny. I'm not sure if Sock Bunny is a girl, if Sock Bunny is multiple people. I've talked to them in DMs. I don't know, but I like it. I like your guys' style. They're the ones that first started really exposing the pro map data from Prostasia. And then they always get overlooked, and that's why I always try and repost them on our story. These smaller pedo rings that are like localized, with like 3 or 4 people and then like a group of men online that are buying stuff. They Sock Bunny. I keep wanting to say she, but I don't know. It doesn't really matter. They do a great job. There is a woman also. Her name is, I think it's Sarah Riata, and it's Riata Eris. It's her name is spelled backwards on her name. You'll see it in the links. She was exposing a lawyer that was kind of hinting out, telling her clients how to avoid being caught being a pedophile. And this woman did a great job just putting this lady on blast. And then I'll mention just a few more real quick. There's one called Another One Bites the Dust, always exposing weirdos on social media. There's exposing exploitation, but it's spelled with a WX. There's Pay Styles, and then we posted it today, which when this goes up, it might be a few days when you guys hear this. Fuck Satin Bell, and then U.S. Vigilante was the guy or girl, I don't know, that was exposing the Taekwondo exposer instructor that was in Bakersfield and had been convicted, and I think was a former police officer or something like that. And Bakersfield PD is completely ignoring the whole situation. The guy is teaching children. He has multiple felonies of crimes against children. It's a very
Wow.
strange story. So I'm going to link all those in descriptions as well. Big shout out to all those people. I love all the work you guys are doing. The new hunters and Arizona Predator Prevention. Fantastic job, like always. Keep it up, you guys.
Yeah, thank you all so much. It's people like you that help people kind of wake up. You know how many people I would hear that didn't know, like, of any teams, even though it had been going on for years. So you guys still doing this is amazing.
Yeah, and like I said, I really enjoy all your guys' work. I don't know if you guys will even hear this, but the people that are listening, please go check those pages out. If you're on social media, give them some love. They do a lot of work, a lot of heavy work, a lot of heavy lifting with this subject and actually confronting these weirdos.
Definitely. I think we'll end it there. Thank you for listening, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Until next time, Banana Cat.
Banana Cats, much love, peace.